All right, what's up, guys? I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to go over my most recent post, basically about how monetary policy decisions are made. So pretty much just get right into the screen share. It's a relatively short post. Um, just it's not an obnoxious amount of information, but it's still worth it. Especially if you actually want to keep track of this kind of stuff. Um, So pretty much the Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC, meets 8 times throughout the year. They're regularly scheduled, basically where they discuss the condition of the U.S. economy and financial system, as well as possible monetary policy actions to respond to however the economy is doing in those financial conditions. Um, so basically, as you can probably imagine, these policy decisions are pretty much only for near to medium term, right? As with anything policy related, very, very rarely do long term effects are they actually considered. Um, as I'm sure there's been many, many arguments done about monetary policy that you could find in any mainstream outlet. Um, it's just there are consequences to not paying attention to long term things. And that's where you get the phrase kind of kicking the can down the road, um, various other things. But what can you do? I mean, they're only there for, what is it, 11 years is the longest they can be. And so there you go. After that, is if there's no reason you could be in office. I mean, why would you think long term, right? You'd only kind of think as long as you could stay in office. Because if you actually try to some extent, to fundamentally fix everything, so to speak, for lack of a better phrase, you kind of out yourself of a job, in a way. So these policies and the policy changes that they make, it's a very broad kind of spectrum of things. So this could be anything from the big balance sheet policy, like big change or just changes in general to quantitative easing or quantitative tightening. Um, but also really specific things that you never really hear about. So one of the things I found in this past FOMC meeting minutes, which was January 25th or so, they made a per counterparty limit on reverse repo transactions of 160 billion per day. Yeah, January 25th to January 26th. And you can find those minutes on just their website. I mean, just the Federal Reserve website, because that's public information. One of the things also I didn't know about. So there's more than just the FOMC, and so the Board of Governors also meets, and that's every other Monday, which is typically open to the public under the Government and Sunshine Act. However, some of those meetings can be closed to the public if the Board of Governors decides that it falls under a specific exemption. Basically, they decide that it's not in the public's interest to be at the meeting or to see the meeting, which I thought was interesting. And one of those recently happened. I don't remember which one. So yeah, so there's that. Also, just reports and stuff. The FOMC provides a statement that summarizes any policy decisions as well as information regarding the relevant factors the FOMC will consider in future policy decisions. So a lot of this has to do with forward guidance and kind of the psychology stuff that they do, which is stuff that we've talked about in previous videos and are also in previous posts. But one thing that I thought was really helpful, and I linked here, this is a YouTube video to a podcast from Eurodollar University, episode 200, and this is done by Jeff Snyder and Emil Kalinowski, which I always think with this kind of stuff, they have a very informative and interesting point of view. And if you're interested in whatsoever, I highly recommend you look at their stuff as well, because that's I look at it. I listen to pretty much every episode that they bring out just because I think it's worth it. So the press conference held immediately after the FOMC did not exist until 2011. So this is where people seem to know a lot more about the press conference than everything else, because I guess because the press is a part of it, obviously. At least that's my original thought. But that's relatively new, so it's barely over a decade old. And it's your typical press conference where the chair of the FOMC comes out and does an opening statement and then answers questions from the media and so on. But besides this, they also have other publications that they publish, or reports and such. So the detailed minutes of the meeting are published 3 weeks after the meeting's date. So, like the ones I alluded to earlier, saying January 25th to 26th, those came out in mid-February ish. But they also publish a summary of economic projections, which is basically just like what individual FOMC members project the economy to be. I mean, that's pretty much it. And they do that 4 times a year. There's also the annual report that the Fed does in order to comply with the Freedom of Information Act, so FOIA. Also, there's the Beige Book, basically anecdotal information on the current economic conditions. And that comes from each reserve bank where they do each of their regions. Because, again, the regions for each reserve bank are based off of the prominent trade regions in 1913. So it was when the Federal Reserve Act was enacted. So 1913. And then there's the monetary policy report as well. And I think they also post the Federal Reserve balance sheet developments. And I think you can find their balance sheet on their website. I haven't found it yet. They have a lot of tabs, but it's definitely something to look into. But other than that, I pretty much just have a comment on this stuff in general that I've really been thinking about the past few weeks. And part of the reason why I've really started honing in on doing posts and such about this topic. So I think it's very interesting, for one. And then you have kind of the mainstream line of thinking, I guess you would say, in which it's basically it's like people think the Fed has so much power to where they can pretty much do whatever they want and they can, just fix it, right? Basically just say, okay, Jerome, get on it and everything's fine. But if it seems like the people who actually know what they're talking about, which is probably not the Fed, at least to a certain extent, have to they disagree. So like one of the reasons why I like listening to like Jeff Snyder and Emil Kalinowski on their stuff, both reading the blog posts that they do and they're listening to their podcast, is because it is an alternative point of view from everything that I was told, at least in school, and what I've learned. But it really makes you have a deeper understanding of the stuff in general and just have a kind of a respect for how complex it can get. To where it's not that simple. And there's a lot of stuff that's very nuanced, and it takes a lot to understand, I think, at least. That's pretty much, after this, I'll probably do a lot more like the history of the Federal Reserve as well, because I think that's definitely worth looking into. Because I've heard some things, and I really want to look more into it. Just kind of the banking system in general at that point as well. But there's one book that I really want to read that has been it's been recommended by so many different people. It's like, well, I got to read this book apparently. And it's The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, I believe. So that's definitely on the radar and will probably help be a source that will be pounded in this. I'll try to find other stuff too. Various other sources, but that's definitely one that's been recommended multiple times and something I really want to look into. So yeah, that's a relatively short post. Really wasn't meant to be some groundbreaking thing. I hope it was at least helpful and helped you guys understand maybe just what's out there. All of the reports and everything else, it's public information. You can find it on their website. Um, just look it up, download the PDF, and have your way with it. That's pretty much all there is to it. That's literally how I learned about it, was just going to their website, downloading the PDF, and just reading it, studying it, comparing it as time progresses, so on. Um, Stuff like that, and just keep going. Um, Anyways, that's all I got for this one. So I hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you on the next one.